Very good morning to you, Michael. Thanks for joining us.
Not at all, Wilfred.
I've been looking through the current definition and the new definition, and we were discussing it with Mara and Jason earlier. Points 1 and 2 seem kind of similar to the old definition. Making sure that people don't impinge on freedoms is 1 and impinge on democracy is 2. What seems new is point 3, that anyone that creates a permissive environment for others to achieve 1 and 2. How do you think about what would qualify as creating that permissive environment?
Well, it's important to stress that the new definition, as you quite rightly say, is more precise than the past definition, and it seeks specifically to respond to the increase in the amount of anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred that we've seen on our streets and social media and elsewhere. The judgment about whether or not a group is extremist is one that would only be taken after a patient assessment of the evidence of a consistent pattern of behaviour exhibiting an ideology that shows the types of behaviour that you've seen there. And we know that there are some organisations, including, for example, very far-right organisations, that promote precisely this gospel of hate that we need to take on.
But in terms of creating an environment, I mean, one other thing that's happened a lot recently is broad protests, and that's led to this definition being updated. Is creating a permissive environment meant to capture the majority on these marches where there might be a minority present?
Oh, certainly not, no. One of the points that I've made is that many of the people who go on these marches are good-hearted people who believe in peace. I might disagree with their view on foreign policy, or I might admire their advocacy for bringing people together, but absolutely not. It's not intended to prevent people demonstrating per se, absolutely not. It's not a restraint on free speech. It applies only to engagement with government, because we know that there have been cases in the past where individual extremist organisations have sought to take advantage of government patronage, money and influence in order to advance their agenda. So today's definition applies only to government and makes it clear that we will keep these organisations at arm's length so they can't benefit from access to government and its funds. You
also say in the release that following publication, the government will undertake a robust process to assess groups for extremism against the definition. Talk us through how robust that process will be, how long it will take, but still no specific debate in Parliament about it?
No, again, it governs what government itself will do. So it's not statutory, it's not a law. It's about making sure that government uses its powers and its money in a wise way. We need to make sure that when we're engaging with communities on the ground, attempting to build bridges and attempting to create a more inclusive society, that we choose our partners wisely and well. And that's why, within government, an expert team of civil servants, advised by academics, and indeed looking at the legal threshold here, will make that decision, and it will be for the Home Secretary and I to decide whether or not the threshold has been met after a very rigorous process of due diligence from a new centre of excellence in the department.
And presumably that will take weeks or months, such that in your speech today in Parliament you can rule out this morning you won't be naming any specific groups?
Well, again, I mustn't preempt anything that is said in Parliament itself, but again, any group that will be classified will be done, that process will be done only after a rigorous process of due diligence. The key thing here is that civil servants are capable of working at speed. We have some excellent officials in my department, very well versed in this work, but I won't and can't put a specific timescale on this, only to say that we are vigilant and we will take the appropriate steps at the appropriate time.
They can work very fast, but they can't work in a couple of hours. So you won't name any groups in Parliament today?
I can't preempt what is going to be said in Parliament today.
You don't have to say what is going to be said, but you can rule out that there will not be a robust process carried out over the next few hours, so you can't have time to name those groups in Parliament today.
Well, as I say, when I speak to Parliament, I will say more, and it's important that it is Parliament that hears first. And I respect the right of the House of Commons to hear news which is related to government policy first.
It sounds like you're going to try and use parliamentary privilege to name some of these groups before a robust process is worked out whether they really are extremists or not.
Well, I will speak to Parliament, and again, in Parliament, I will lay out additional information which Parliament should hear first.
OK, well, we will be watching, of course, keenly, as we always are. I wanted to move on to the comments about Tory donor, Mr Hester. Do you think Kemi Badenoch, who is a close ally of yours, of course, was right to call out the comments as reported as racist in the way and timing that she did earlier this week?
I think that Kemi Badenoch and the Prime Minister were clear that the comments were racist, and Mr Hester has, I understand, apologised, and so he should.
It's interesting on the apology front. Maybe you've seen a different apology or an additional apology that I haven't seen, and it's been made privately. The only one I've seen so far is his original apology retraction, which said the comments he made were not based on race. The Prime Minister has said they were racist. Presumably that, therefore, is not a sufficient or genuine apology.
I believe it is a genuine apology. I haven't spoken to him, but I understand that he has shown real contrition over those remarks, and my inclination is that when someone apologises, and apologises sincerely, as I understand he has, to accept that apology.
But can an apology be genuine if you don't admit that you were sufficiently wrong? If the Prime Minister thinks the comments were racist, must he acknowledge that for the apology to be genuine?
Well, again, I haven't talked to Mr Hester, but I do believe that his apology is sincere, and I think that the Prime Minister was very clear about that. It's important to recognise that both the Prime Minister and Kemi Badenoch are representatives of the most diverse cabinet in history. The government that we have is the most diverse in the Western world, and Mr Hester was giving money in order to support a British Asian Prime Minister. So, again, I think it's important to put that in context. But again, it's right that Mr Hester should be called out for his words, and it is also right that he should apologise. I understand that he has, and shown full contrition.
It's interesting that qualification is offered again, as many of your colleagues have, about how diverse we are, which I accept. And I accept we have a very diverse government, and we have had a number of diverse Home Secretaries, and indeed have a diverse Prime Minister. But surely the point is exactly the opposite. The reason our country has that is because people call out wrong when it occurs, as opposed to using it as an excuse to justify wrong. Again, I just focus on the final point of this question, which is, can someone really apologise for a racist comment, which is what the Prime Minister thinks these comments were, without acknowledging that the comments were racist?
Well, again, I haven't spoken to Mr Hester, but I think that when someone says that they are sorry, and I understand he's deeply sorry for these remarks, then my natural inclination is to exercise Christian forgiveness.
OK. Making it... OK. Let's move on to the other topic of the day that we just mentioned as you were coming in. We were playing up Tom Parmenter's report about the Grimsby and Cleethorpes constituency, and a lot of focus on the Red Wall and the importance for your party to focus on that in the next election. Do you need Boris Johnson's help to win those seats back? Or keep those seats, excuse me?
Boris is a valued member of the Conservative family, and I'd like the Conservative family to come together at the election in order to make sure that as many people as possible hear how important it is to keep Keir Starmer, who doesn't have a plan for this country, away from power. Grimsby is a town I know well, and my department has been working with Jason Stopwood, who I know you were interviewing with, and others on the ground in Grimsby in order to improve transport links, in order to improve vocational education, to provide additional investment so that people in Grimsby can have the skills that they need, and in order to support the renewables sector, and in order to support the fish processing sector as well. So I think that Grimsby has a brilliant MP in Leah Nietzsche, and I'm certain that Leah will be re-elected at the next election.